So the aim of this video is to show you how to get your camera to animate. This thing over here is a camera. It is the only camera in the scene currently, and it is the active camera. This triangle at the top, it's solidly colored in. That means it's the active camera. If I insert a second camera by going Shift A and then coming down to camera and I click it, then I've got a new camera that's inserted where the 3D cursor is. So if I go GZ and bring it up, you'll see I've got another camera. It has a little triangle telling you where the top of the camera is, but it's not solid. The reason it's not solid is because it's not the active camera. This one over here is solid, it is the active camera. So if I want to switch between cameras, I need to go to this one here that looks like it's got a whole bunch of things in the scene properties, and camera. I can choose between camera and the second one, which is labeled camera.001. I can rename those cameras if I want to up here in the scene collection. So instead of calling it camera.001, it could be camera face or some other more appropriate name than that. But it's just a demonstration to show you how it works. Now on a Blender Guru video, he uses a simple turntable. That's one of the first ones I'm going to show you. I'm just going to turn down my font size here because that's just getting a little bit crazy. What he does is he puts in an empty, so we go Shift A, goes to an empty, and just uses a set of plain axes, and we can just see those here. My 3D cursor is just on the edge of the box, but if you want to move it down and around and put it approximately in the middle, then that's going to be all good. That's going to be my camera target, so I can rename that as camera target, and I should put a space in there. Helpful if I use the real mouse. Rename, or double click it, actually this works better. And I'm going to use the first camera, this one here, and if I click this button it'll show you what it's aimed at. Now this camera is going to be essentially parented to, so I've got the camera selected, and then I'm going to click as best I can on that empty. Now that empty is just highlighted. I'm going to go Control P and then set parent to keep transform, and you'll now see over here I've got these two objects. If I get just the camera target and I rotate that, you'll see the camera goes around. So to do that, I've just highlighted the empty and push R and then Z for the Z axis, and it moves around. So that's particularly helpful if you're RZ and then you just want to pivot around. So how that would come out in an animation, you go to the animation pane into frame 1 with the camera target highlighted, push the letter I and then choose insert keyframe. So in this case it's only rotating, so that one would work. So if I clicked it, you'll see over here it's all yellow and it's memorized its position. If you're feeling lazy, you might go all of them, location, rotation, scale, but it's a bit pointless. I need to move forward in time, so I'm going to drag my playhead forward to about 150. And then I'm going to rotate that around the Z axis, and you'll see on the left hand side that's an active view of what's happening, and when I get about 360, you'll see on the right hand side, here we go, it's rotated 360 degrees negative, so that's just the direction I put it in. It's changed, so that's orange. So now if I push I to insert keyframe, watch these orange and yellow colors change. So if I just put in a rotation or location rotation scale, it's now keyframed. So looking down here in this dope sheet, I've got a keyframe at frame 0 and at frame 150. It also plays all the way to 250. So the end frame is 250. If you notice this pale gray and the dark gray, I'm going to click in here. I'm going to type 150 and push return, and now this is dark space, so that doesn't, the playhead doesn't go beyond here. I'll hit rewind, and then when I hit play, notice on this left hand side over here, the camera, you'll see that's what the view is, and on this view you'll just see the camera whizzing around the outside. So that one's particularly useful for a simple turntable, and I think it's one of the simplest ways to get the job done. All right, another way that was pretty common was, if I look from the top, was to put in a bezier curve or circle. So if I add in Shift A, go to curve, I can go use a bezier curve or a bezier circle. I'm going to start with a circle, and then I'm going to scale it out a wee bit. And essentially, this camera, I'm going to grab it, bring it over to here. So the back end of the camera is currently lined up with the circle. And then when I look from the side, I'm going to go GZ, bring that down, so again it's the right height, and then look from another side that again is on the right height, but it will not be pointing at the right direction, it's be pointing down there. So you need that to be constrained to aim at either the box or the empty that's in here. So with that camera highlighted, I'm looking for this icon here that looks a bit like a pulley, two pulleys with a chain going around it. So it's object constraint properties, and I'm going to add an object constraint a little later. So I'll start with the camera highlighted, shift click the bezier curve, and if I go Control P, you want this menu here to pop up. If you've done it in the other way and you go on circle then camera and go Control P, you'll get a really short list, so that's not what we want. So we want camera then circle Control P, so then we can have follow path. So that camera is going to follow that path. It's not currently pointing in the right direction. So now with the camera highlighted, coming back to add object constraint, and it's going to be track to, and I'm going to make it track to a specific object. So this target, in this case, I'm going to call it the camera target empty. Alternatively, I could just choose the default cube that's in there. And so if I look through that camera, which I can't right now, if I click this toggle camera view, that's going to look through the active camera. So remembering I can change the active camera up here, and so now that's what the camera is looking at. Before, the camera was looking down. Now the camera is looking at this this empty. Now that empty is a little high, so if I go GZ and bring it down, then that will control where the camera is. So if I move that empty around, the camera will follow it. So that's a particularly useful thing to do. So you could keyframe the empty, and I do that sometimes. But looking through that, and I can just hit space and it will go around, and it essentially by default takes 100 frames to go around. So you'll notice this playhead it'll be movement up until 100 frames. You can play around with that length, but I'm not talking about that in this video at this point in time. So that's a particularly useful method. I'll add in a third camera, Shift A, come down to camera, and this one is going to be following the bezier curve. So I'll just pop this over here. I'm going to add in a curve, a bezier curve, and I'm going to rotate around, I'm going to make it larger. Then when I go into edit mode, you'll see these handles. These handles here control essentially how the curve goes. So I might, just for making everything a little bit easier to see, hide a few things in the scene. So I might get that camera and hide a few of those things. But I really want this camera and I want this curve, so I can hide some of these other things. Right, I think that'll do though. So this camera here, it's the third camera. I'm going to make that the active camera. And looking from the top, line up this back corner here with the end of that bezier curve. Look from the side, GZ, bring it up. So it's essentially around about where the bezier curve is. Camera highlighted, click the bezier curve, Control P, follow path, and that animation will essentially just go following, just like the other one over there is, and then it will rewind and then go back. But it's not pointing where I want it to, so if you want to do that, you could add in another empty and have it follow that. that could be a particularly good way to get it to point at what you want. So this camera here is going to be constrained, add object to constraint, have it track to, and you can hit this eyedropper and choose that object, so it's pointing straight at it. So if we go back in time, it's pointing at that empty, so I can point that empty there if I wanted to, maybe having it follow the text, and then I can go forward in time after I've inserted a keyframe. So I've got a keyframe for that empty, and then I can go forward in time, hit the space bar, and then this empty might make, if I move that along the text, and then I insert another keyframe there, might hide that, and then move forward in time. Actually, I don't know if that keyframe stuck. Yes, it did. Move forward in time, move the keyframe further along. Oopsie-daisy, that's a bit high. GZ. Insert another keyframe. This is likely to be a bit bumpy. Go all the way along to the final frame, and then another keyframe there. So I've keyframed, in this case, the empty that the camera is tracking to. The camera is following the NURBS path, the path anyhow. So I'm going to rewind that and then hit play. So the camera is following a path, but it's also following that empty. So you can do all kinds of different animation. You could do something even simpler again. If I unhide that one, I'll put in yet another camera, add in camera, this one's camera 02. This could be following a simple animation as well. So I'll rewind that back to 1. I'll set the active camera to the one I've just put in the scene, and that's gone solid there. If I look through the camera, it's not pointing where I want. Push the letter N, go to view, tick the box, lock camera to view. That's one of the most useful things you've got in terms of getting your camera to aim the way you want it. And then untick the box when you're ready. So I will add a keyframe here. I insert location, rotation, scale, maybe move forward in time, and a simple zoom in. I'll go like this. It's done a simple zoom in, maybe to a close in detail, and then add in a keyframe. In this case, it's likely to be just location would work, but be lazy and choose location, rotation, scale, and it works. And I can rewind and hit play, and that's just a simple zoom in. These are different ways to get your camera animated. I'm hoping this is helpful. There are other things that can be done as well. One last little bit before I finish this video. Just want to show you a little bit about these curves here. Just change the layout so we've got a bit more to look with. These curves can be extruded, rotated, bent. One of these other ones that I had, the circle, if you click that, actually get the circle, you can edit that. You can bend the circle so you could have a dip in it as it goes around. You could even, say for this one here, if you wanted to, you could rotate it so it's got a bit of a tilt on it. So that camera is called camera face. It's not very helpful, so that might be better to call it camera following a circular path. That's a more meaningful name. So if I go to the one that I stupidly named camera face, you'll see now that that's solid. I look through the camera, and if I hit play, you'll see it goes around and it does a little dips and ups and downs because I changed the shape of the circle. So there's various different things that are you can get animation in your camera. I'm hoping that these different techniques are helpful to you.